All right. Good afternoon. We're
Good
live.
afternoon, and thanks for telling people. Welcome to Lifestyle Business. I'm Anne.
And I'm Chris.
And we are so excited for our show today because we are going to be hosting some Launchpad members. And this is the start of summer, the end of spring, and a celebration of all things that are magical. And one of our big values at Launchpad is our members are our magic. And so we're going to hear some stories from them, but we're also going to hear a few tips and tricks, maybe some survival suggestions for this time of experience that we are having during COVID. But wait, before I get too far down the path, guess what's happening at Launchpad New Orleans today?
What is happening?
Do you know?
Somebody else is streaming live?
Someone else is streaming live from Launchpad New Orleans. That is our friends at Black Tech NOLA. So they are running their big event, their big annual event from Launchpad in New Orleans. Now, don't worry, they're running that event virtually, but they have made Launchpad their command central.
Yeah, we're super excited to be hosting them. That conference is going on right now. So if you decide this is not as exciting and enthralling as you want,
your cup of tea,
flip over to the Black Tech NOLA conference streaming live. But yeah, anyway, we're super excited to have them at Launchpad. I'm really excited to hear and see and chat with some of our members.
It's been a while.
Because it's been an unusual year. We're sort of halfway through the year and wanted to check in, but we're not seeing anyone, or we haven't been seeing anybody since February, right?
Not in real life.
Not in real life.
Although we did see everybody as the world closed back in February, so that was kind of lucky.
Yep. Both in Memphis, in New Orleans. Yeah, we
Stockton.
Yeah, Stockton. But anyway, we'll be very interested to hear how everybody's doing, navigating this. You've got quite a lineup of questions, and we're going to be doing it in roundtable format. So that'll be interesting to see all the boxes on the screen.
Yeah. I mean,
we haven't done that before.
I know, multiple boxes. If the more locations that we open, less able for us to all fit into the boxes, but exciting nonetheless. Go ahead. Were you going to talk a little bit about UBI?
Well, the last time we had multiple boxes on, we had Mayor Tubbs and Scott Santens, a UBI advocate, and they just made a big announcement yesterday.
They just did.
And I think
did you say that it was because of our show?
We can take full credit for this, of course. Mayor Tubbs and Eric Garcetti, the LA mayor, and a number of other mayors across the country have announced mayors for guaranteed income. That was a super interesting.
The UBI Mayors Coalition.
That's right. Super. I think you should probably chair that too.
Why not? I'll call Tubbs and see if he needs me.
But anyway, exciting to sort of see that initiative moving forward. During a time like this, we know how important that, sort of baseline income is to people. So I feel like
I love the call to arms there around kind of proving out with case studies and data. So exciting to see that actually happen.
Yep.
In 11 cities. Working from home. It's happening. It's here.
We're working from home. We've been in an office this whole time. You're seeing us back in San Francisco. How's it going?
It's weird. Again, 2 weeks in a row. We came back to the house to tidy things up, and in the hopes and dreams that Airbnb will be back online sometime in the future. TBD.
We'll see.
But nonetheless, it's been interesting. I mean, I did have a dining experience that was quintessentially San Francisco yesterday. You forgot about that one.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
While eating my taco on the street, which was amazing, a woman came up and asked me if she'd be able to have it if we were finished eating. And Chris suggested that we would wrap it up for her, which I thought was actually a good suggestion. And she was like, there's not much left, and just reached over and just started eating my taco.
Felt like a little bit of a COVID potential moment.
It was not pleasant. I did not like it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't like you reaching over and eating my taco.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was San Francisco. So,
but we are seeing a lot of work from home, as people are well aware of.
Actually, been interesting. You see all these people like in their windows at their laptops. It's like this weird world where it's like it feels like we're going back to like the 70s or the 80s, where people are in their homes, you know, going out as like a weekend thing.
Yeah.
But they are working from home. And most people here are working from home.
And the company Quora, the Q&A site, along with many other companies, has sort of announced remote first. I highlighted that in the Rasa.io newsletter that went out this morning. But one of the things that they said that I found interesting was that they're turning their office, they're turning their headquarters into a co-working space. So it's a co-working space for their employees and for their members. Not members, for their employees who can come in on the rare occasion that they actually need to go into an office. So a lot of thinking. I
feel like that's just like a headquarters that's hot desk focused. A co-working space would suggest they were like letting you and I go in work. We're
just
like,
that they've
where are the
described
people that answer the questions?
that they've described it that way. Is interesting to me. You know, we get questions from a lot of people these days around, is co-working here to stay? Is co-working, you know,
the future
going to get crushed in this economic environment? And I think we're going to make it. We're going to make it through. And I think that there's going to be more adoption of this flexible strategy as companies figure out how they can bring employees back safely. We have been beginning to be asked to do some consulting on this to help people prepare. And for our members, any members who are watching, we have been instituting, obviously, safety procedures across all Launchpad locations. But we're also going to add a user experience layer to that, rolling out here in the next week or so. Dio is leading that, and we're going to be sort of rolling that out. So, you know, effort to get people back into offices, obviously into co-working spaces, do it safely, and do it in a way that feels good, right? It's sort of like,
I like,
you know,
we call it a user experience.
Yeah, like, you know, I put it this way. If anybody's gone to a restaurant, have you gone into a restaurant, whether indoor or outdoor, or a store, and you walk in and you're like, should I wear a mask? Is this weird? Should I touch people? That sort of thing. I think people need to have it explained. Here's the expectations of being in here, being safely, and then everybody can relax and go about the best, you know, the best experience they can have. But I think expectation setting is really important right now.
I mean, one of our favorite spots, they did a great job, Campofina in Healdsburg.
Yeah.
They repainted, for you Launchpad members, we're not repainting murals right now, but they repainted their hallway with a mural to welcome you as you came in this outdoor entrance. And then they had someone standing there to greet you and kind of walk you through what to expect. And sort of say you're going to go to your thing, and once we arrive and take your order, you can take your mask off, and they just made it really comfortable.
Yeah.
I felt like it was really nice.
So we're working to have a similar experience at Launchpad. We heard this morning more and more people are coming back in. Some people who haven't been in for a while are back, which is great. So anyway, we're ready to welcome you in. Speaking of welcoming in, why don't we welcome in some members into the call?
That sounds like a great idea.
All right.
Okay,
so I'm going to start to welcome them in as you do intros.
You bet. Familiar with the run of show here.
Okay.
Okay. I'm so delighted for this great lineup. Members really are magic, and we can learn so much from them. One of our values at Launchpad is diverse and inclusive, not exclusive. And I think when you hear our roster of folks, you're going to see how diverse and unique each of their businesses are and how we can still learn so much from each other because of that. So from East Nashville, Nathan Dose is the co-founder and COO of AGD Entertainment, an artist coaching, management, and booking company. Welcome to Nathan. And from Memphis, Alec Ogg, founder of Parasaur Studios, helping entrepreneurs and new companies make awesome podcasts. And from New Orleans, Lydia Winkler and Marco Nelson, co-founders of RentCheck, the property management solution to quick, organized, and contactless, notice that, pivot, inspections on your smartphone. And from Newark, Michael Miner, Director of Institutional Relations and the Partnership for Urban Economic Development, ensuring government and public support for pro-development policies in urban New Jersey cities. And finally, last but not least, closest to us in Stockton, California, Aaron Gilbraith, founder of CPR Cert Pros, a CPR and life support education company certifying individuals and companies in basic life support and first aid. Welcome, everyone. Who are we missing? We're missing Lydia. We're missing your partner in crime. There he is.
Right here. How's it going?
All right. Good to see you. I feel like the last time we saw you was catching beads at a Mardi Gras parade.
Yeah, it was.
It's a different world back then.
Very, very different. Cool. So I thought we would just go quick round. Thank you guys all for joining us. And just each of you represents a different industry. So we're going to do a quick fire challenge on our fancy show today. And we're going to talk a little bit about COVID predictions for your industry, and some of the myths that people want you to believe, but where you think it's going, and then a great backdrop to kind of talk a little bit about you and your company and how it's working during that time. So I'm going to kick it off with you, Nathan. Music industry. I was recently on a panel talking about the future of community and ticketing, and everybody on the panel was like, well, you know, next year when we go to Coachella, everybody will have gear. And I think that might have been confirmation bias from everybody around the table that wants us to go back to big music festivals. So tell us what's happening in entertainment.
Yeah, man, it's tough, right? Like it's really, it's not looking good for us necessarily, but for our work specifically, we work in artist development, right? And so these big festivals are really fun, and the music fans have such a great time going down to the big festivals. I don't find that they're specifically great for artist development in any way. I mean, if you've ever gone by the new artist tent or any of that, they're just vacant. They're bad performance opportunities. Like, the artists are always very disappointed in the way that their performance comes off. They're not represented to the masses in a big way. And what has happened with the growth of the festival bubble is also the stadium concert has gotten so, our technology to be able to make a stadium show amazing. Like, if you think back to the 60s and 70s, the Beatles quit touring because they couldn't provide a quality performance to the size crowds that were coming, right? So they were like, this is pointless. Everyone is screaming so loud, we can't amplify the music loud enough to get over the top of it. Well, all that's changed now. So a stadium performance, you can do. I saw U2 maybe 8 years ago or something, and I was blown away by how many people were having a quality experience. So that's amazing when you get to that level. But as far as artist development goes, when tickets are $200, $300, what I think happens in the music fan's mind is, oh, I love live music. I'm going to see Taylor Swift this year. But that's the only music event that they're probably going to. And somehow in their head, they're like, that's it. That's my music experience for the year. And so on the flip side of COVID-19, what I think is really interesting is you can't put thousands upon thousands of people into a space anymore. And so what does that look like for live entertainment? It looks like restaurants and patios and open spaces, amphitheaters that aren't packed in. So who are those performers gonna be? They're not gonna be super well-known artists who would be selling out those spaces. It's gonna be artists who people are excited about, they know about enough to come out, but your amphitheaters that hold 2,000 people to do concerts responsibly will have to be at 50% capacity. So now those places are going to want to stay viable. They're going to want to stay open. And so who's the talent that they're going to be booking? They're going to be booking artists that are a little bit more affordable because they can't sell the amount of tickets and they're not going to have the amount of attendance. And who are the artists who are a little bit more affordable? Developing artists. So in a lot of ways, I think that developing artists are going to see a lot of opportunity on the other side of this that may have been a little bit harder to attain. And I think people are going to want entertainment as soon as possible. We know that. Now there's a couple people, we woke up Sunday morning to news that Chase Rice had hosted a concert in Knoxville for 4,000 crammed in fans with no face masks and all of this. And I have no idea how that happened. I don't know how that was allowed to happen. But there's some people who are just plowing forward anyways. But it was interesting to see the response because it was very mixed response that people were not happy about it. Some people were like, yeah, it's our right to gather and drink beer. So it's interesting, but I do see for the developing artists, I do see a lot of opportunity on the other side of this as fans return to what we call soft ticket spaces like breweries and restaurants and things like that, because I think a lot of them have moved to where in their heads, they're like, I'm going to Bonnaroo, that's my music experience, and not necessarily looking for entertainment. So I think we'll see a good return there for developing artists. So for us, that's exciting if that were to go that way. And as far as our work with artists, we work about 70% with artists in the Nashville area, and about 30% of our artists are regional or international. So we've always been equipped to work via, a live stream or like video chatting and stuff like that. And so once all this happened, we just jumped to that immediately, and it was fine. And even with our clients who are in Nashville that are used to seeing our pretty faces every couple of weeks, we just kind of jumped to video chats. So it hasn't been too crazy. I think all of us are wanting to get back into an in real life experience, but I think as far as musicians go, we have to be concerned about the fans and people being safe. But if a vocalist gets COVID-19, the after effects of this disease are really not great on the respiratory system. So vocalists and singers need to be really cautious about actually getting sick. And it's not just about, who else could get sick and are we allowed to get together or should we be wearing masks? I think vocalists really do need to be concerned about just getting sick to begin with, because we are hearing that there's some heavy duty effects on the respiratory system.
Yeah, that's great. And I love, I'm going to pass it over to you, Alec, because we're on the entertainment side, but I love that point, which is from an entrepreneurial perspective, when we get thrown curveballs, right? You're like, okay, well, how do I make the best of this situation? Mm-hmm. And it's like, you know what? Emerging artists is my jam already. So it just so happens to create a good environment. And Alec, what are you seeing in your world? And obviously, I hear that maybe podcasts aren't as up as they used to be because people aren't commuting. So tell us a little bit about what's going on in your world, and and how are people responding? And can I ask where you are? Because that feels not like Memphis.
Yes, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, my girlfriend and I had this trip booked way before COVID to visit Oregon. So I'm in Oregon. I'm in y'all's neck of the woods.
Nice.
Got tested before I left. Gonna get tested when I come back. But yeah, I'm over on the West Coast. But yeah, it's funny with podcasts because you're right that my podcast listening went from like 3 hours a day down to like barely at all because of commutes. So you're totally right about that. But a lot of companies are, like you guys are doing right now, trying to find ways to communicate internally and externally. And so kind of what you guys are doing right now isn't unlike a podcast, you know? And so there's a lot of companies talking to me right now about what kind of solutions they can have for their upper leadership to communicate down and out. And so I think communicating through podcasts and video, all that kind of content marketing is still going to grow, but yeah, the commuting is definitely decreased.
All right.
Marco and Lydia, let's turn to you guys in New Orleans. How have things been for Rent Check? You know, the contactless, check in, check out review of apartments seems like that could be big right now. How are things on your end? How have you guys been navigating?
Yeah, property managers are looking for a way to enable social distancing while still getting property inspections done. So we've been able to fill that need for them, and we provide a safe solution for both tenants, property owners, and landlords, property managers. So we've seen an uptick in usage, which is good in terms of properties that are on our platform and number of tenants getting these inspections done faster. But property management is an essential service. And so we're just trying to be as helpful as we can be throughout this challenging time.
Yeah, I have a funny story for you about property management. It has nothing to do with contactless check-ins or check-outs for rent. It has to do with check-ins and check-outs for rental vacation properties. And we happen to have to rent our house. We don't have to, I mean, we do, it's helpful. It's helpful to rent our house, rent our life. And this weekend, guess who was the acting property manager? And guess who forgot we had a check-in? And so they showed up and they were like, hey, it's not clean. And so we basically had to, I was like on the ground, scrubbing the floor around the lady and all the stuff that was going anyway. So we could have used the app.
Enough out there.
Yeah, we're doing what we can.
It was a bit much. We were like, no, look at all the policies that we have for COVID-19. And then we were like, God, we have to go through this whole checklist.
Yeah.
All right. Michael, how are you doing?
Well,
You're based in the state of New Jersey and you're working on the future. So tell us a little bit about where things are going in New Jersey.
we're here in New Jersey. You may or may not know that our governor just put the kibosh on opening up in-seating restaurants. So there are a lot of very unhappy people in New Jersey right now. But that is indicative of where we are. The Partnership for Urban Economic Development, we are a super PAC. We came here to Newark, in particular New Jersey, about a year ago. A bunch of very senior, well-traveled and experienced professionals across all business lines who decided, what do we want to leave behind? What do we want to leave? What do we want to be known for? So we took a real look at urban cities like Newark, where we have Launchpad. And we thought, the young people that I see on this screen who are like our kids, what do they really want? What are they going to need in terms of business, politics, and policy to create the futures that we created for our kids? So in that distinction, what would we do? So we sit here in Newark in this intersection of policy and business, and we look at young entrepreneurs as well as ecumenical organizations, as well as enterprise organizations. And we try to leverage what the community needs, what business needs, what the politicals needs, and what policies have to be infused to make all that happen. So we've been here for less than a year. And then we're now hit with this, what do you call this? This tsunami. This is a real trifecta. This is it. We have a health crisis, a serious health crisis. We have a serious economic crisis, serious. We have a country that's being propped up now by government coming in and buying the debt and keeping it afloat. So we have a financial crisis. We have a trifecta. So we've had to take a look and be nimble enough in our business model to really begin to look at how do companies, how do the leaders of companies, how do they really get inside of what exists, not what they think exists, not what our leadership and our government is telling us exists. We know that's not true. But how do they really begin to look at what happens if what we see now is here? This is the it. We're in it. Mm-hmm. We could be in it for 6 months. We could be in it for 2.5 years. So what do you do? What do you do as the owners of these amazing facilities that you've created when your expenses may stay the same, but your revenue now comes to here? And that's where it is for the next 2 years. And it's not just you, the business owner. It's not just you, the employee. It's not just you, the business leader. It's also you, the human being, because you're taking calls not only from your kids, you're taking calls from the parents who are your employees who have kids. And what do companies do when those parents can't come in and their kids aren't in school yet? We've never seen anything like this before. So we've turned our attention to really taking a look at how companies and organizations can really begin to pivot in the pandemic. We will do a webinar for, many of you may have Rotary clubs in your cities. We have about 80 to 90 Rotary clubs here in New Jersey, about 3,000 people. And we'll do the first webinar for the group of Rotarians. And in New Jersey, it's a 100-year club. Just asking that question and bringing in real subject matter experts in pandemics, in leadership. Just having them really take a close look at what exists, not what you think exists, what's really here. How do you look around it? How do you look beyond it? And how do you begin to restructure and pivot your organization to be inside of what this is? So as it relates to the partnership, policy and politics, whoever said, may we always live in interesting times, never saw one of these coming. Because this has changed the rules of the game. And I don't care what your political preference is, when you have the rest of the world wondering if they should let Americans in, we have a problem. We're getting calls from clients on the ecumenical side because they're realizing their parishioner base is changing. They're beginning to see the checks that went to the pulpit going to groups like Black Lives Matter. And they're seeing it generationally. So how do you get in front of what is now real? And that's where we now sit and working with business enterprises to see it, get in front of it, prepare for it, and then sail in it and sail through it. So that's where we are at the Partnership for Urban Economic Development.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, interesting.
Great. And Aaron, to wrap up our panelists as an intro, you are, obviously you provide education and services for folks who are thinking about support systems, but then you, first of all, at the Stockton location looks like, so thank you for Thank you for being there.
Have my mask.
Good. Good to see you.
I always keep it on me. There's just no one here today, so.
There you go.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about what you're sort of seeing in your industry and on the ground in Stockton in terms of the health crisis that we're up against here.
Well, like most cities, we have seen a spike. I think it was a 29% increase within the past few weeks. So it has been growing. But as far as what we do in our education, so our company, we are a sister company, are in cahoots with the American Heart Association. So we've been teaching American Heart BLS, first aid safety training, since 2015. And we are very still active because our main priority is to certify the doctors and nurses who are still on the front line. So we are actually first responders ourselves. So that's something that I'm trying to make sure that we keep our doors open and that, you know, we maintain our health. It's me and another instructor here. We have been able to certify a few other instructors because we are a training center. So we are trying to help other medical professionals. So I've been in medical since 2010, RMA and phlebotomist. They kind of got into instructing in CPR and the cardiovascular system. What people don't really recognize is we know about the COVID. Some of us don't know what it does, but it actually attacks the respiratory system. So when you go into respiratory arrest, you're going to go into cardiac arrest. You can help save someone's life by providing cardiac arrest or cardiopulmonary resuscitation, which is CPR, until the ambulance gets there, EMTs or whatever further help gets there. So that's the major thing that we're stressing to people right now, because the doctors and nurses, they all know this, but the average everyday person, they don't know this. They just, oh my God, something happens, someone passes out, that's it, I don't know what to do. So, and if it is a COVID case, an actual COVID case, it's much more dangerous than just a normal cardiac arrest. You know, so there's two things at bay. There's respiratory arrest, and then there's oxygen that needs to go to the body and the organs, and then there needs to be blood flow. So what we're doing is, as you guys know already, Eric and Matt has put up, you know, all the proper signage. We got signage as well from CDC, from the City of Stockton officials, making sure everyone keep their spacing. You can see behind me some of the desks and everything, co-working spaces actually, you know, it's apportioned out properly. And obviously hand sanitizers, bleaching, wiping down surfaces. We're keeping that to our forefront. We have to, number one, because we are basically a medical training facility here. So mortar trainings, because we still have to train these medical professionals. A lot of them aren't being able to go back to work if they're not actually trained in cardiopulmonary resuscitation. So the American Heart was very generous. They gave a 90-day extension on all certifications. So that was really big. Even for us as instructors, our 2 year, we have to recertify 2 years as instructors. So we had a 90-day extension ourselves, but we teach classes, you know, 3 times a week, if not more than that. So, you know, we're pretty much on top of it, but still, as far as the paperwork and actually getting evaluated by training sites, that's kind of where we've been. So, and then also we have how we've kind of transitioned is we were doing a lot of live in-house classes. We still do some, but they were longer. The average class usually runs about 4 hours, but we've encouraged students to do the online portion at home in their own convenience, and then they would come to us and do the skills, the online actual hands-on skills portion, which takes about 25 minutes. So it lessens the contact time or being in the space of somebody else. And then also we always encourage all of our students to come bring face masks. If they don't, we also provide them ourselves for them. Again, wiping down all mannequins, all equipment, making sure there's one route directly to where the course is going to be. We usually just use the conference room here because nobody's been in here, and we've continued to use the facilities and keep it clean and wiping it down and sanitizing. And then also, I got a quick story. We had an interesting story. We had a vendor, so we have vendor accounts for our equipment, and we've been with them since we've been teaching the course, 5 years now. And if somehow they didn't know what we did, it was just interesting because sometimes you hear our name, CPR, CERT Pros, people are like, what is that? You know, not everyone knows the acronym for medical, and we get it. And so I called and I put in an order for a whole bunch of hand sanitizer, gloves, bleach, you know, things to sanitize and wipe down. And they sent the email saying, hey, your account doesn't qualify. And I'm thrown back, like, what are you talking about? Like, you know what we do? Like, they don't have a clue as to what we do. So I actually had to call them and get on the phone with their rep. And it literally took about 25 minutes. And then a manager got on and I said, hey, you know, I literally for the past few weeks, I was running out of gloves and hand sanitizer. And this is when the hand sanitizer was a crisis and toilet paper, right? So I got on there and I explained to them, hey, you know, we certify the doctors and nurses. We're getting these doctors and nurses that are coming in every day asking us, hey, you know, they're giving us calls. Hey, do you guys do this? And I'm like, hey, and we have to judge our inventory as to how can we get you in here?
Wow.
If we don't have the stuff, I'm gonna have to start referring you to other people. We do have other instructors, but they were waning too. So, you know, it was nice that the supervisor got on and as he heard us, and I said, hey, simply I said, what do you want me to tell the doctors and nurses that are on the front lines that they can't get their certification because they can't go back to work, and that's shortage of staff, which there already is a shortage of staff. What do you want us to tell them? You tell me, and then we can go from there. After that, they say, you know what, hey, you're good. We're gonna change your account. They sent us bottles and now I have so much stuff I don't know what to do with it. So, you know, and it's okay because they just didn't know. I get it, you know, I get it. And they were trying to provide, they were looking for in-facility places. So that's one thing that we had a small hiccup on, but it's fixed now. And then also the COVID-19, the trends, what we noticed, and again, American Heart, it's hitting the older generations big time. Those 60 years of age and older, and those are the ones, everyone, we've already been quarantined. So it makes it even more challenging when we're already at home. It's hitting this generation harder, those who are of that age group, and they're feeling helpless. So what we've done, what me and my team have done, we've made it our goal to specifically focus on that generation, you know, age 65 and up, 55 and up actually. And there is actually a big promo that we're going to be doing. And we decided, you know, hey, my mother is 65 and she's very sick, but she knows CPR. And my sister and all my nieces and nephews, I trained them, especially during the start of this. And I have a brand new great niece. So we had to instruct her mother, you know, as far as infant CPR and adult as well. So what we've done, we kind of shifted to, we have an online skills verification where we actually sanitize our mannequins, all our information, all of our training supplies, and we will ship it directly to a corporation, a company, or individuals. And then we'll leave them a package full of brand new sanitizing and anything they don't need to send it back. And then if they're nearby, we actually drop off the package for them. We'll do the online skills like via Zoom, and we'll certify them via this way. That way there's no contact, and it's great. It's been working beautifully. And some of the medical professionals who are, you know, near us, they kind of want to do that as well. So we kind of shifted that way. That's been helping us and also alleviate any risk to getting in contact with anyone. So yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing, and we're really focused on the older ones because it's hitting them the worst. And yes, it's hitting everyone, but it's showing this. The data has shown them more than anyone else. So we don't want to leave them out. That's where all of our knowledge and our culture comes from. So we have to do our best to educate and help those ones out. So and then also on the American Heart Association, we have our site, aha.heart.org. Has a lot of great resources as well. They work very close with CDC, and we want to just let people know if you have any other questions. American Heart, CDC, well, they work hand in hand, and a lot of great questions and answers to what's going on.
That's great, Aaron. Thanks so much for that. And it is fascinating to see the diversity of everyone's perspectives. And yet, I don't know about you, but I've learned something new from each of you today.
I feel like, so one of the things that we've been dealing with is we're sort of, sometimes we feel sort of heads down, and you're so focused on survival for one, you know, sort of, you know, and Michael, the way you put it was exactly right. Like sometimes you're preparing for what the big one, right? We think about that in New Orleans, like hurricanes or, earthquakes or, fires. Here's this pandemic, economic crisis, like this is it. We're in the big one right now. So I'm just curious, and we can go around, or whoever sort of wants to jump in. Some of us have businesses that are, on the very front lines of it, like you were describing, Aaron. Some of us have businesses that are impacted in other ways. But, whether it's, pivot or perseverance, right? And sometimes it's like, okay, we should be doing something differently. Sometimes it's, let's just keep going. We got to get through this. There's partners that we've been talking to, and just, I think even ourselves, we go through these emotional ups and downs, right? So some days you're going to make it, some days you're not. I'm just curious if people have thoughts for other Launchpad members who might be watching right now in that context. As you're thinking about your day-to-day, pivot or perseverance, how are you getting through, and how can those lessons, from an entrepreneurial standpoint, relate to, other Launchpad businesses right now?
One of the things that I do, and I do this daily, is one, just kind of recognize that when we get into spaces like this, as just human beings, our identity really takes over, whether it's we work a certain way, or we don't work a certain way, or we do things a certain way. So that happens over here. Over here, we're concerned and insecure and don't know what's going to happen, and we get to deal with that. I get up each day allowing the identity to be the identity. It's going to do what it's going to do. I deal with the concern and the fear as just concern and fear and just a feeling. I call my key people. I really want to know what my key people are thinking and how they're doing. How is your family? Then I begin to look at line and start talking to them, just as a human being. How are you doing? What's going on with you? What's happening in your family? I call my clients and I have the same kind of conversation. Of course, we want to jump into the business mode, but what we're doing with our clients is really looking at it from the human space first. How are you doing? How are you coping with this? What are you saying to your spouse or husband or wife or children? Who are you being? Not your business card. I don't care about your resumes. Who are you being inside of this? And we advise our clients, start with who you are. Take a look at the leadership in your company, then take a look at the individuals that keep your company moving, and then start your day inside of that context.
I love that. I think there's a big difference between pivoting and adapting too, right? Like the adapting, like if you have a business that COVID-19 hit and everything crumbled like it did for many, but instead of thinking, oh, I've got to pivot right now, but you adapt to the situation, a lot of businesses are going to come out of this period of time with new service lines that should stay viable after COVID-19 is over. If a business can learn to function in this environment and provide a quality service to their client, if that's a possibility. So instead of, it might be like, oh, we got to pivot hard, but it might be like, hey, is there a small adaptation that you can make to still stay close to center? That adaptation, that pivot, that might stay really viable on the other side of this, and just make things even easier. We've seen all of the artists go to live streaming with tipping and new merchandise solutions for them, drop ship merchandise solutions where people can order the merch online, it's delivered to their home, and tipping online, things that they never took the time to learn how to do when they could play a gig down on Broadway. but now they're learning how to do that, and that they can, when they're able to go back and play the gig down on Broadway, they'll also be able to do the live stream and earn the tipping. So that adaptation is adding to their skill set and increasing their service possibilities and things like that. So I think adapting is key to growth.
Yeah, I like that. And it doesn't always have to be so extreme that it's a full pivot.
There's obviously
People love work.
affected by this that have to just pivot, like we gotta move now. But if you can pause and take a breath and say, is that necessary? And try some small adaptations first. Maybe that's the move.
And it's been a time of experimentation, right? You know, sort of, especially
Alex
with us
would know
all,
that.
you know, talking on online. We're getting comfortable with ways of doing business and trying things that we haven't tried before. Yeah, Alec, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, before COVID, was the majority of our revenue was coming from leaders coming in to our recording studio and basically paying for recording time, and our kind of post-production services were secondary. And I always knew we needed to move to more of kind of like a half online, half in person kind of business model. And it's like this, the quarantine experience just amplified all of those needs. And it's like, it actually helped me slow down and kind of stop trying to take on more projects and just get really good at the systems and processes that can make the projects I already have succeed. And to Michael's point about like, who are you being? Our tagline at Parasar Studios is amplify your positive influence. And one of the clients, when I'm like, very desperate for clients right now, one of our clients, she started basically being like an anti-masker on her podcast and kind of spewing some stuff that I really didn't agree with. And I kind of had this moment of like kind of an integrity problem where I'm like, okay, I really need this client, but she's no longer aligning with what I think our motto is of amplify your positive influence. I think she's kind of having a negative influence based on the things she's saying about disagreeing with the World Health Organization and the PPE. And so I had to sever ties with her. But I feel so good about that now. And it was a really tough decision to kind of make in the moment when you're feeling all these financial pressures. But yeah, I feel like the COVID-19 experience has just amplified everything to 11. And you really just have to look at your business and be like, what am I really trying to do here? And what do I want to be doing? And you have a lot of time to just sit with those kind of questions. And I feel actually a lot better about my business and where it's going now than I did in February when I didn't expect any of this. And it's kind of like when you trim the hedges, you make room for another rose to bloom or something. And I just got a call today from a big nationwide company that agreed to sign the contract for me to produce their podcast. And so that'll be the first nationwide company. Yeah, snaps. But it made me really proud of just kind of making tough decisions, I guess, which I didn't really have to do before.
Yeah, I feel like, I think there was especially when you think about like the PPP loan process, I think there's a real emphasis there around that was designed actually with the outcome that the government wanted, right? Which was try and keep people employed. And when you're actually on the ground and you're a small business, I mean, for us, for example, PPP wasn't very helpful, right? Our rent to employee ratio is like 20-1. So when they were like, our landlords are like, well, didn't you get PPP? Because the 200-person law firm got PPP. And I'm like, yeah, I got PPP and it doesn't come close to paying the rent. And they're like, how does that work? And so you sort of go through this process. I'm making them sound all old-timey. I won't tell you what market they were from. But what was interesting about that is that actually as a small business, and we've had to make cuts in our business, and I'm sure everybody's had to sort of make some decisions that are tough moments, right? But actually, I look at those as ways for us to kind of create more oxygen in the business so that we can breathe and be able to navigate the storm, right? And get through the next 6 months, because we know it's not difficult to predict that this is not going to be over in August. It's going to keep going, and we've kind of got to weather the storm. And I feel like you're going to make tough decisions, but it's also the time when you have the capability to make those decisions, because you're like, I don't have much to lose at some level. So it's just interesting to hear that story. But I also think that, like, when we talk about PPP, it was meant as like this short-term thing. And in reality, a lot of small businesses have to look back and go, what am I going to do to survive? And
Right.
It's not going to be a government program.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking what you guys said, because you guys touched on a shifting but one thing I want to focus in on is perseverance during this time, right? And I'm probably going to say something that sounds so cliche, but it's the truth. Now's the time, especially for small businesses that are within the Huddle by Launchpad, or Launchpads all throughout, is to show who you are. Like Michael said, Mr. Minor, show who you are, right? What kind of person will you show up to be in your business, in your life, in your relationships, in your friendships, in your working relationships? These are the times where those bonds will grow stronger, and you understand your business. So now is the time to step back. I had to step back and reevaluate the whole business. Like a lot of businesses did, and some of them that are actually folded, people have given up. To each their own. I get it. You know, we understand. It's tough. It is what it is. However, to persevere is going to really help you for the future growth of maybe if and when this passes, right? Maybe a year from now. We don't know, whenever it happens, but we persevere. We're already going through some trials and some pain, so get a reward from it, right? Let's get a reward from it. Like building this business, I had no clue anything on business. I didn't know anything. I didn't know a lick about anything. And, and now the self-education, the webinars, the trainings, the certifications, running the business, payroll, just it's so much stuff that you've come this far. Do not give up in your business. If you have to, again, like you said, Nathan, if you have to shift for a minute, do that, right? Yeah. But don't give up, because you've already come this far, right? Don't fall, get up, keep moving. And, on the other side of that pain, we're going to be a reward that you put in that hard work for. And you never know who's watching, right? For me, it's my nieces and nephews, right? I'm the first person in my family to graduate high school in 25 years. I grew up in the area in Stockton, the south side of Stockton. I got shot and stabbed at the age of 13. I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
I graduated. They would pass us in high school with 1.7 GPAs. Like, okay, you're good. I didn't know anything. I'm not supposed to start a business. I just became an author. I wrote a book during this time. I'm not supposed to be here.
Right.
But we're here. And yes, it's been tough. There's times where I felt like giving up all the way. And then I look back and I'm like, man, like, look what you've come through. Look where you at now. Like, I'm not supposed to be in here. Like, I would walk by these buildings. I see people walk by all the time, and it's just, you don't see this, right? Especially somebody that's my skin color. We don't see this a lot. That's just speaking the truth. It is not where I come from. We don't do this, but I'm changing that norm because my nieces and nephews are seeing it. They're being impacted. Now they want to start their businesses. I'm teaching them about online content creation, how to do things, how to provide for yourself. And I want them in Huddle. This is where we started my business. I was with Huddle when they were in the other building. I'm walking down the street and then I ran into this CPR certification company. It kind of literally fell in my lap. And I'm like, dude, I have no clue. I'm going to be working at Kaiser, making great money. My friend shows me some numbers. He said, go do this. This is what you need to do. I Googled, YouTubed everything. And I mean, I wish I knew how to, go find a business mentor. I didn't know any of that. But now we are where we are, and it's been beautiful. And just don't give up. For those who are watching, don't give up. You've already been through pain. So get a reward out of it. It's like working out. If you stay consistent over time, you're gonna see that body change. You're gonna feel better. You're gonna feel more confident, and you're gonna get stronger. So muscle memory in your business and your personal relationships, like Mr. Miner said, continue to show who you really are. And this is that time, right? Dig deep, and it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt, but it's still your rep. So you gotta keep going.
I don't know if it's similar where you guys are, but here in Newark, there's this amazing group of young entrepreneurs. And these are not, I working for years in Manhattan and living on Wall Street. These are not the young folks in Manhattan who, for whatever it's worth, they have a launch pad. These are young, exciting, strong-willed individuals that just said, I'm not going to have my life go any other way with this. So I probably mentor all of them. So during the course of the week now, I'm doing walks in the parks with them. I'm on the phone, I'm doing Zooms, and it's just like business leaders, these entrepreneurs have this notion of how things should be. And they're so young, they don't realize it, that they should forget it, just get rid of all that. But they have a notion, and now that they're sitting inside of this, nothing is the way they think it should be. And I'm constantly with my mentees, Andrew being one of them, saying, this is what is. So this is what's so right now. And this is what's so, and these are your feelings on top of what's so. And I have the same conversation with pastors and business leaders. Regardless of how you think it should be, this is what exists. And you got what exists, and then you got your feelings about what exists. So after you find out what exists, look at where you're adding your feelings to it. Get that out of the way and just deal with what exists. These are my expenses, and this is how I feel about my expenses. Forget how you feel about them. Look at your expenses, look at what you need and what you don't need, have some wonderful conversations that one side of the conversation won't like, get it over with. The things that run your life are the things you just don't deal with. Deal with it and move on. Period, full stop. And if entrepreneurs at this wonderful stage in their lives can just get really practical around what exists and how they feel about it and separate the two, you're not only going to get through this, you're going to pull all your friends through it with you. This is a great time. Unfortunately, we're in it. But as you're all saying, this is when you get and you begin to recreate yourself and you declare this is how it's going to go, period. And then you stay inside that commitment. And whatever you're committed to, take those actions every single day. The next day, recommit, take the actions every day. And as a young entrepreneur, you will get through this and you'll get to the other side of this, and you will be so powerful on the other side of this. Trust me, Emis.
That's awesome.
I
Yeah.
feel powerful in that Aaron needs to be my new personal trainer.
Well, thank you both for those are inspiring words as we're sort of coming to a close here. I know we have a calendar block for people, and they may have calls after this, but Aaron, Michael, thank you for that. Anybody else have any sort of words of wisdom or notes you want to end on?
Lydia,
Marco, do you guys have anything you want to leave us with?
No, I think they covered pretty much all the inspiring things. So I just kudos to them. Great message.
Just now's the time to help others if you are able, and as flexible and accommodating as possible, because you never know what someone else is going through.
Right.
that's a really good reminder.
Yeah.
I know, especially as things start to kind of feel normal. I think we're going to have a lot of waves over the next
Oh, yeah.
increase. I just mean, we're all going to go through that, and it is important to think about it. And I just want to extend a real thank you, guys. This was our first time trying a format like this. I think one of the things we love about Launchpad is the chance to kind of talk to people who are doing different things. And we have an audience I'm seeing across all of our platforms, but honestly, it was kind of just really nice for the 6 of us to sit here together, and I really enjoyed and loved the stories, and I feel like I got something from each of you, and I really appreciate that today. And so I thank you for your time. It's the most precious resource we all have. So just on behalf of the Launchpad Nation and Chris and I, thank you so much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all.
Let's go. One last thing.
For Alex was a new big deal.
Oh, thanks.
It is cool. One last thing, guys. Just remember to check on people, like Linda said, because we're all
Absolutely.
going through it. We're not all always at our mentally peak state. So just check on your friends and family and just say, how are you doing? Give them some time, man. Give them the time that they need. You know, I was going through it a few weeks ago, and it was tough. It was just tough. And you know, I think one of the things was because I felt no one was checking on me, and no
Right.
one checked on me. And I'm like, man, like I've been through, you know, some crazy stuff in my life, and I'm pretty strong mentally, but this is too much, you know, and then trying to deal with, you know, make rent for home and food. And you're just like, oh my God, my business. And just check on people. How are you doing? And give them some time, man. Love them.
Yeah.
And love people. Love, and let them know that, because we don't know who it's going to be, right? Don't be afraid. You know, I come from a hard background where we don't say that often either. And I
Right.
tell my nieces and nephews, my sister and everything every day, I love you. And I love you guys. I don't know you guys like that, but I do. There's only one race. It's called the human race. So
I got that.
that's it. Love you guys, and please be safe and continue to be great entrepreneurs, be great owners. And this is what I need. I'm so glad that I said yes to this, and thank you guys. Nice to meet you all.
Yeah, thanks. This was good.
See you, everybody.
Nice
Yeah.
to meet y'all.
All right, on that note, we'll see y'all. Thank you so much, everybody.
Take care.